Do games today feel different to you?
I remember going to visit Carl, and he already had a Super Nintendo. I literally stayed up the entire night, and I didn't want to stop playing. I didn't want to leave. I felt bad now thinking back, because I didn't want to stop playing the Super Nintendo.
It was so cool and fun to watch that on the car ride back home, I couldn't stop telling my dad about how awesome what I had seen.
And Super Castlevania 4. I literally, until I had to go to bed that night.
I went on to spend countless hours with that game, mowing down a bunch of static-faced bad guys with what my sister and I referred to as the pencil gun.
That made me, that game alone made me fall in love.
Be it Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, Zelda Ocarina of Time on Nintendo 64, or Metal Gear Solid on PS1. There were so many incredible games that are cherished even today, and each new game was an event.
We're at EB Games in West Hollywood for the release of the Burning Crusade.
Waiting for the World of Warcraft expansion to come out.
But what about now? When you now hear about a new entry of Zelda or the Elder Scrolls, you're happy, but not really excited as you used to be.
I personally don't enjoy most of those games since apparently I'm a boomer that hates games now.
But let me tell you this. Yes, we have changed, but so has the gaming industry. Take the Inquirer for example. Except for maybe an occasional TV spot, your main information source was booklets and covers or packages, or maybe friends. Nowadays you get flooded with marketing from every side. TV, radio, YouTube, Instagram and Twitter, just to name a few. Game publishers in 2023 often have huge marketing budgets to spread the word of their newest game, shoving it into your face at every possible occasion. But that's not the only way word gets around. With the rise of social media, content creators and influencers got an insane amount of popularity, also trying to get every piece of information about new big games they can, taking away most mystery surrounding it and the excitement when first experiencing the new game. Even if you try, there's next to no hiding from ads. You get bombarded from everywhere with a new,
quite unlike anything else. We want to build a whole new world for gamers.
Yet the games they praise are nothing special, because even though they try to sell it different, innovation is a rare sight these days. Back then every game would have new mechanics, different aesthetics or whole new genres got created. Developers were just gamers making games, having fun in their craft, experimenting with new things and creating something they would be proud of.
Here I get to play anything.
Nowadays there's rarely anything new at all. A new Call of Duty every year, where they don't even bother adding new maps anymore, new FIFAs that have less additions than a new iPhone, or Bethesda and Ubisoft games, repeating the same formula over and over.
All of this just works.
Now, I really don't want to shit on developers here, they just do their jobs as they are told to. When you have a family to feed, you don't start discussing with your boss that he has literally no idea what he's talking about.
You're fired.
Publishers are essentially the gaming equivalent to music record labels, except that the people in charge at gaming publishing studios not always have an idea of what they are actually selling. They just look at data and numbers and act accordingly to it, which doesn't sound bad at first, but creates the same problem that YouTube clickbait videos have when they don't really deliver, promising something crazy but giving something mediocre. Buzzwords like massive open world, randomly generated and player-driven choices guarantee, according to data, massive sales. And because every big studio only cares about getting the next big hit, the next Fortnite, they give these games ridiculous budgets, making a fail a massive potential loss, locking themselves out of trying to create something new. Something fresh, meaning we get the same thing over and over. A massive open world that's mostly just empty. Player-driven choices are, well, mostly just aren't that. There's only a handful of examples where this get actually delivered on. Randomly generated content promises endless playtime, which is plain and boring, because random is never as good as well thought and lovely handcrafted elements. Look at Super Mario 64 as an example. Take away the crazy speedruns there of this game, the average playtime of a full playthrough is between 10 and 20 hours. Nonetheless, it's remembered as one of the best games of all time. Zelda Ocarina of Time has only 25 to 35 hours. Metal Gear Solid 10 to 20 hours. Heck, the main story of GoldenEye 007 is only 9 hours long. People love to joke that we played the same games over and over back then because we only had a handful of them. Which, to be fair, is true, but was it boring because of that? A good short quality game always beats an epic 300-hour-long pile of nothing. Speaking of time, don't you as well get the feeling that game time felt much faster then? Because you got sucked into it so much, nothing around you really existed anymore? This level of immersion rarely ever gets achieved these days, and there's a very simple yet obvious reason for it. Instead of solely focusing on the main purpose of games, meaning to get away from your everyday life and have some fun, big studios bring real-life problems, ethics and politics into the game, which constantly breaks the plausibility of the world in which the game takes place. And it's not only that, it's hard to sink into a game when it's a literal bugged mess. Nothing snaps you faster back into reality than having to load a past save file because the main objective bugged out so hard that you can't continue playing the game. Studios take patching as an excuse for delivering an unfinished product.
The game is fixed.
Which is just absolute ridiculous. When I buy a car, I wouldn't accept them sending me the transmission a couple months later. And no matter how good and fixed the game becomes later on, the first experience is gone forever and leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. And speaking of immersion, there's no way you can sink into a game with microtransaction pop-ups consistently blocking your screen throughout the game. Which brings us to the biggest and most crucial change of the gaming world. Monetization. Buying a game was very simple back then, and the way trading is intended to be. You give money and get a finished game. When you get home with it, there's no day one patches to download and you can immediately play it from start to finish. These days there's DLCs, loot boxes, battle passes, pay to win, 800% value bundles, subscriptions, download.
It's just good business.
When big investors started spotting the big juicy cake the gaming industry is becoming, they immediately started forcing their claws into it. Thus, the motivation behind developing games slowly started shifting. Back then, there was a high focus on delivering a product which the consumer would be happy with from start to finish, to build a trust into the studio. After all, regular customers are the heart of every company. To assure that, developers, who usually are passionate about the game themselves, would be listened to. Feedback would be taken by higher-ups. Today, it's all about manipulating the psyche of the customer to make them buy in-game services or items, milking each and every single game as much as possible. Simply because it's more money efficient selling 3 skins for $60 than developing another full 100-hour game with story, world and mechanics for the same price. It even encourages the publisher to do morally questionable things, like leaving promised features out of the game, only to sell them later on as a DLC for another $30. This is easily proved by the amount of games the studios release these days. Take Rockstar for an example. In the 6 years between 2001 and 2006, the studio released 21 games. Between 2018 and now, it's 2, of which one is just a remaster collection from some of their old games. The mainstream investor takeover process had one catalysator, which is of course the same reason gaming got so big and so popular in the first place. The World Wide Web. It is the thing that enabled communities and playing with or against other people. but also brought after purchase monetization. Gaming feels different, because gaming has in fact changed. But there's not only bad sides to this, it also made the developing process and distribution much more accessible. Every year there's dozens of hidden gems coming out of nowhere, giving us an amazing experience to dive into. If we stop chasing the feeling of nostalgia by buying new entries of franchises from games we loved as a kid, but just won't ever be as good as they used to be, and instead open ourselves to something fresh and new, to innovation and passion, maybe, just maybe, we can feel again like we did back in the day.